On February 17, 2024, Michael Jordan sat alone at his 61st birthday party. Nobody came. The greatest basketball player ever couldn't get one person to celebrate with him. The next day, he collapsed and went to the hospital. His son Damon rushed to help and discovered something shocking. His famous father had hurt so many people that everyone hated him. But then Damon had a crazy idea that would change everything. What terrible secrets had Michael hidden that destroyed all his friendships? And how did 12 poor kids save the loneliest man in America? The grandfather clock in Michael Jordan's dining room chimed 8 times, each sound echoing through the empty mansion like a basketball bouncing in an abandoned gym. February 17, 2024. His 61st birthday. Michael sat at the head of his mahogany dining table, staring at 29 empty chairs arranged perfectly around him. Each place setting gleamed under the crystal chandelier, fine china, silver forks, cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles, golden balloons spelling out 61 bob gently near the ceiling, their metallic shine catching the light like tiny suns mocking him from above. The 3-tier birthday cake sat untouched on the marble kitchen counter, its 61 candles now nothing but colorful puddles of wax dripping onto the white frosting. Elena, his housekeeper, had spent all morning decorating. She'd hummed while hanging streamers, smiled while arranging flowers, and asked 3 times if she should start preparing the appetizers. Not yet, Michael had told her each time. People are still coming. But nobody came. His phone buzzed against the polished table. Another automated message. Happy birthday from Nike. Thanks for being part of our family. He deleted it without reading the rest. The silence that followed felt heavier than any loss he'd ever experienced on a basketball court. Michael's fingers drummed against the table, the same nervous habit he'd had before every big game. But this wasn't a game he could win with practice or determination. This was something else entirely, something that made his chest feel tight and his breathing shallow. Elena appeared in the doorway, her kind face creased with worry. At 72, she'd worked for Michael for 15 years, long enough to see him through his highest victories and his loneliest moments. But she'd never seen him look quite like this. "Mr. Jordan," she said softly, "should I put the food away?" Michael didn't answer immediately. He kept staring at the empty chairs, remembering the last time this room had been full. Christmas 3 years ago, maybe? Or was it his 60th birthday? The memories blurred together, but he knew one thing for certain. Each gathering had gotten smaller over the years. "Yeah, Elena," he finally whispered. "Put it away." She moved quietly around the room, clearing plates that had never been used, folding napkins that had never touched lips. Michael watched her work, feeling like a spectator in his own life. "Maybe they got caught in traffic," Elena suggested gently. "You know how Chicago can be on weekends." Michael managed a weak smile. "It's okay, Elena, you don't have to make excuses for them." But it wasn't okay. He'd sent out invitations 6 weeks ago, elegant cards with gold lettering, the kind that showed he'd put thought and money into this celebration. Former Bulls teammates, business partners, celebrities he'd met at charity events, people he'd considered friends. The responses had trickled in over the weeks. "Sorry, I'll be out of town. Wish I could make it, but I have family obligations. Thanks for the invite, but I'm swamped with work." Some didn't even bother to respond at all. Michael pulled out his phone and scrolled through his contacts. 743 names. Agents, lawyers, business partners, endorsement deals. When had his phone become nothing but a business directory? When had he stopped having friends and started having only connections? He tried calling his old teammate Dennis Rodman. Straight to voicemail. He called his former coach Phil Jackson. No answer. One by one, he went down the list, hearing the same electronic voice. telling him to leave a message. Standing up slowly, Michael walked to the living room window and stared out at Lake Michigan. The water stretched endlessly toward the horizon, dark and cold under the February sky. Somewhere out there, millions of people were celebrating their own birthdays surrounded by family and friends who actually wanted to be there. His reflection stared back at him from the window, still tall, still imposing, but somehow smaller than he remembered. The man who'd once commanded the attention of entire stadiums now couldn't get 30 people to show up for dinner. Michael made his way to his trophy room, a space he usually avoided these days. 6 NBA championship trophies gleamed behind glass cases. 5 MVP awards lined the walls. Olympic gold medals hung in perfect rows. Newspaper headlines from his greatest moments covered an entire wall. Jordan does it again. His airness soars, the greatest of all time. He touched the glass case holding his first championship trophy from 1991. He could still remember that feeling, pure joy, complete satisfaction, the sense that he'd proven himself to the world. The crowd had chanted his name for 20 minutes straight. Now, 33 years later, he couldn't get anyone to chant happy birthday. Maybe this is what happens when the game ends, he whispered to his reflection in the trophy case glass. Maybe this is what I deserve. The words hung in the air like a confession. Had his drive to be the best pushed everyone away? Had his need to win every argument, every negotiation, every conversation finally cost him something he couldn't get back? Elena's gentle knock interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Jordan, I'm heading home for the evening. Are you sure you're all right?" Michael turned away from his trophies and managed what he hoped looked like a convincing smile. "I'm fine, Elena. Thank you for everything today. The decorations were beautiful." She studied his face with the wisdom of someone who'd raised 6 children of her own. "You know, Mr. Jordan, sometimes the best birthdays are the quiet ones. Sometimes they help us remember what really matters." After she left, Michael stood alone in his trophy room, surrounded by reminders of everything he'd won and trying not to think about everything he'd lost. The house felt enormous and empty, like a museum dedicated to someone else's life. Outside, snow began to fall against the windows, each flake catching the light before disappearing into the darkness. Michael watched until his eyes grew heavy, wondering if tomorrow would feel any different, wondering if anyone would even notice if he wasn't there at all. The grandfather clock chimed 9 times, marking another hour of the loneliest birthday of his life. 24 hours later, Damon Jordan was teaching 12-year-old Johnson how to tie his shoes when his phone rang. The caller ID showed Elena's name, which was strange. His father's housekeeper had never called him before. "Hello," Damon answered, keeping one eye on Johnson, who was still struggling with the bunny ears method. "Damon, thank God," Elena's voice was shaky, breathless. "It's your father. I found him collapsed in his study this morning. We're at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. You need to come now." The phone slipped from Damon's hand, clattering on the linoleum floor of the Milwaukee Community Center. Johnson looked up with worried eyes, the same expression Damon had seen on hundreds of kids' faces when their world suddenly shifted. "I have to go," Damon told his supervisor, Mrs. Washington, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. "It's my dad." The 2-hour drive from Milwaukee to Chicago felt like the longest journey of Damon's life. His beat-up Honda Civic rattled along Interstate 94, passing fancy cars that reminded him of the world he'd grown up in, but chosen to leave behind. At 28, Damon had spent most of his adult life trying to be the opposite of his father. Where Michael demanded perfection, Damon embraced messiness. Where Michael competed, Damon collaborated. Where Michael collected trophies, Damon collected stories from kids who just needed someone to listen. He'd become a social worker, not despite being Michael Jordan's son, but because of it. Growing up in that mansion, surrounded by wealth and fame, He'd learned that having everything meant nothing if you had no one who truly knew you. The last time he and Michael had talked was 6 months ago, during a bitter argument that still burned in Damon's chest. Michael had called him disappointed and wasting his potential when Damon turned down a job offer at Jordan Brand to stay at the community center. "You could have anything you want," Michael had shouted. "Instead, you choose to work with losers who will never amount to anything." "Maybe that's the difference between us, Dad," Damon had shot back. "You see winners and losers. I see people who need help." They hadn't spoken since. Now, racing through downtown Chicago traffic, Damon wondered if those would be the last words they'd ever exchange. The thought made his stomach twist with regret. And something else. Love, maybe buried under years of hurt and a misunderstanding. Northwestern Memorial Hospital buzzed with the usual chaos of a big city emergency room. Damon found Elena in the cardiac unit waiting room, her eyes red from crying. "How is he?" Damon asked, sitting beside her on the uncomfortable plastic chair. "Stable," Elena said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "The doctors say it wasn't a heart attack, thank God. But he was severely dehydrated and exhausted. They think it was stress and loneliness." The word hung between them like an accusation. Damon had known his father was isolated, but he'd assumed it was by choice. Michael Jordan had always seemed like he preferred being alone, above everyone else. "Can I see him?" Elena nodded toward room 340. "He's been asking for you." Damon's footsteps echoed in the hospital hallway as he approached his father's room. Through the small window, he could see Michael lying in the narrow bed, looking smaller than he'd ever appeared on television or in person. Gone was the intimidating presence that had dominated basketball courts and boardrooms. Here was just a 61-year-old man in a hospital gown, connected to machines that beep softly in the quiet room. Damon knocked gently and pushed open the door. Michael's eyes opened immediately, still sharp, still alert, but somehow vulnerable in a way Damon had never seen before. "You came," Michael said, his voice hoarse from the oxygen mask he'd worn earlier. "Of course I came," Damon replied, pulling a chair close to the bed. "You're my dad." They sat in silence for several minutes, 28 years of complicated history filling the space between them. Damon studied his father's face, noticing new lines around his eyes, grey stubble on his chin, the slight tremor in his hands. "Elena told me about yesterday," Damon said carefully. "About your birthday." Michael's jaw tightened, the same expression he'd worn during post-game interviews after tough losses. "I don't need your pity." "It's not pity, Dad. It's..." Damon searched for the right word. "It's sadness. I'm sad that you spent your birthday alone." Michael turned his head toward the window, watching clouds drift across the February sky. "Maybe I deserved it. Maybe I pushed everyone away." The admission surprised Damon. His father had never been one for self-reflection or apologies. Michael Jordan didn't lose games, and he certainly didn't lose people. Except apparently he had. "What happened, Dad? Where was everyone?" Michael's laugh was bitter, empty. "Good question. I thought I had friends. Turns out I had business associates and people who wanted something from me. When you stop being useful, you stop mattering." Damon reached out and took his father's hand, the same hand that had sunk countless game-winning shots, signed million-dollar contracts, and built an empire. Now it felt fragile, almost brittle in his grip. "You matter to me," Damon said quietly. Michael's eyes filled with tears he'd never let anyone see during his playing days. "Even after everything I said to you? Even after I called your work worthless?" "Especially after that," Damon replied, "because it showed me how much pain you're in. Happy people don't tear down others, Dad. Lonely people do." For the first time in 6 months, father and son really looked at each other. Not as the basketball legend and the disappointing son, but as two men trying to figure out what family meant when everything else fell away. "I don't know how to fix this," Michael whispered. "Maybe we can figure it out together," Damon said, squeezing his father's hand. "Maybe it's not too late." Outside the hospital window, the sun was setting over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. For the first time in 24 hours, Michael Jordan wasn't alone. And for the first time in 6 months, Damon felt like maybe his father might actually need him. The machines beeped steadily, marking time in a rhythm that sounded almost like hope. 3 days later, while Michael napped in his hospital bed, Damon sat in the cafeteria with his father's invitation list spread across the small table. Elena had found it in Michael's study, 30 carefully written names with phone numbers and addresses. These were the people who should have been at the birthday party. Damon started with the obvious choice: Dennis Rodman, his father's former teammate and once close friend. The phone rang 4 times before Dennis picked up. "Yo, who's this?" Dennis's voice was gravelly, tired. "It's Damon Jordan, Michael's son. I'm calling about..." "Look, kid, I got nothing to say about your old man. He made his bed. Now he can lie in it." The line went dead. Confused and frustrated, Damon tried the next name: Derek Williams, another former Bulls player who had been at family barbecues when Damon was little. Derek answered on the first ring, but his tone grew cold the moment Damon mentioned his father. "Your dad hurt a lot of people, Damon," Derek said carefully. 3 years ago he came to my restaurant opening. Big deal for me, you know." Having Michael Jordan there meant everything for business. Damon waited, sensing there was more to the story. "Instead of supporting me, he spent the whole night telling investors that I was living in the past and that my business plan was amateur hour. Right there in front of everyone. Cost me 2 major deals and nearly bankrupted me. Derek, I had no idea." "Course you didn't. Your dad's good at keeping his image clean. But some of us remember what it's like to be on the wrong end of his perfectionism." The call ended, leaving Damon staring at his phone in shock. This wasn't the father he knew, or maybe it was exactly the father he knew, just turned toward other people instead of him. He called Johnson Chen next, a celebrity chef who had appeared in several charity events with Michael. Johnson was more willing to talk, but his story was just as painful. "I invited your father to my new restaurant 2 years ago," Johnson explained. "It was the biggest night of my career. Food critics, investors, everyone was there. Your dad ordered the salmon, took 1 bite, and announced loudly that it was mediocre at best." Damon's stomach dropped. In front of everyone? He didn't just stop there. He called the waiter over and sent it back, saying he'd had better fish at gas stations. Then he got up and walked out while the whole dining room watched. The review in the Tribune the next day mentioned his reaction, said if Michael Jordan couldn't finish his meal, maybe the restaurant wasn't worth visiting. "Johnson, I'm so sorry. I almost lost everything, Damon. Had to lay off half my staff. It took me 8 months to rebuild my reputation." Johnson paused. "Look, I don't hate your father, but I sure don't trust him either." One by one, Damon worked through the list, and each conversation revealed another bridge his father had burned. Sarah Martinez, a small business owner who had partnered with Michael on a youth program, told how Michael had publicly criticized her marketing ideas in front of the board, calling them Bush League and embarrassing. "He didn't just disagree with me," Sarah said, her voice still shaky years later. "He humiliated me. Made it clear that I wasn't smart enough to be in the same room as him." The board dropped my company the next day. Tommy Rodriguez, a former sports agent, described how Michael had spread rumors about Tommy's ethics when a contract negotiation didn't go Michael's way. "Your dad destroyed my reputation over a 2% commission difference. Took me 5 years to rebuild my client list." Each story followed the same pattern. Michael's legendary competitiveness and demand for perfection had crossed the line from business into personal destruction. The man who couldn't stand losing a game had apparently couldn't stand anyone who didn't meet his impossible standards. By evening, Damon had called 15 people from the list. Not one of them spoke about Michael with warmth or friendship. They respected his achievements, feared his influence, but none of them actually liked him anymore. Damon walked back to Michael's hospital room, feeling like he was carrying a heavy weight in his chest. His father was awake, watching the news on the small television mounted on the wall. "How are you feeling?" Damon asked, settling into the visitor's chair. "Better. Doctor says I can go home tomorrow." Michael muted the TV and looked at his son. "You've been gone all day. Everything okay?" Damon hesitated. How do you tell someone that they've systematically destroyed every meaningful relationship in their life? How do you explain that their legendary competitiveness had become a weapon that hurt everyone who tried to get close? "Dad, I called some people from your invitation list today." Michael's expression immediately became guarded. "And they told me things about what happened between you and them over the years." The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Michael's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Damon saw the same stubborn pride that had made his father a champion and a destroyer of relationships. "They probably exaggerated," Michael said finally. "People love to make me the villain when business doesn't go their way." "Dad, this wasn't business. Derek Williams was your friend. Johnson Chen looked up to you. Sarah Martinez believed in you." Damon leaned forward. "You didn't just beat them in competition, you humiliated them as people." Michael turned away, staring out the hospital window at the Chicago skyline. The city lights twinkled like stars, beautiful but distant, untouchable. "I wanted everything to be perfect," Michael whispered. "I wanted everyone around me to be the best, to try as hard as I did. When they disappointed me, you destroyed them." I told them the truth. "No, Dad. You told them your truth. The truth that said if they weren't champions, they were worthless. The truth that said being right was more important than being kind." Michael's hands clenched into fists on the hospital blanket. "That's what made me great. That's what made me win. And that's what made you alone on your birthday." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Michael had spent his entire life believing that his ruthless pursuit of excellence was his greatest strength. Now his son was suggesting it might be his greatest weakness. "So what am I supposed to do?" Michael asked, his voice breaking slightly. "Apologize to everyone? Pretend I didn't mean what I said?" "I don't know," Damon admitted, "but I know that winning doesn't matter if you have no one to celebrate with. And being right doesn't matter if everyone you care about is wrong about you." Outside the hospital window, snow began to fall again, each flake catching the light before disappearing into the darkness. Father and son sat in silence, both of them beginning to understand that Michael's greatest challenge wasn't winning another championship or building another business. It was learning how to be human again. "Tell me more about what they said," Michael said quietly. "I need to know how bad it really is." And for the first time in his life, Michael Jordan was ready to face a loss he couldn't blame on anyone but himself. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the hospital room window as Michael sat on the edge of his bed, fully dressed and ready to go home. But he didn't look like a man eager to leave. He looked like someone preparing for the hardest conversation of his life. Damon sat in the visitor's chair, holding a small notebook where he'd written down everything the people had told him. The weight of those stories felt heavier than any basketball he'd ever carried. "Okay," Michael said, his voice steady but quiet. "Tell me everything. Don't leave anything out." For the next hour, Damon carefully shared each phone call, each story of hurt and disappointment. He watched his father's face change with every revelation. The slight flinch when he heard about Derek's lost business deals, the way his shoulders sagged during Johnson Chen's story, the barely visible tremor in his hands when Damon described Sarah Martinez's tears. When Damon finished, the room fell silent except for the distant sounds of hospital life in the hallway. Michael stared at his hands that had once been called magic, hands that had lifted trophies and signed autographs for millions of fans. "I remember that night at Derek's restaurant," Michael said finally. "I thought I was helping him, showing him how to be better, how to demand excellence from himself. Dad, there's a difference between helping someone improve and destroying their confidence in front of their biggest supporters." Michael nodded slowly. "I know that now, but in the moment," he paused, searching for words. "Do you know what it's like to be me, Damon? To have everyone expect perfection every single day for 30 years. Damon waited, sensing his father needed to work through this himself. "When I was playing, every shot mattered. Every decision could win or lose a championship. I learned to see weakness everywhere, in teammates, opponents, even in myself, and I learned to attack that weakness, because that's how you win." Michael stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Lake Michigan in the distance. "But the game ended, and I never learned how to turn it off. Every business meeting became a game to win. Every dinner conversation became a chance to prove I was right. Every friendship became a competition I had to dominate. Dad, when's the last time you had a real conversation with someone who wasn't trying to get something from you?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Michael thought for a long moment, his reflection staring back at him from the window glass. "I honestly don't know," he admitted. Maybe 20 years ago. Before the second retirement, before the business empire really took off. Everything after that became about maintaining the brand, protecting the image, staying on top. Damon joined his father at the window. "What was it like before all that?" Michael's face softened as he traveled back in memory. "I was just a kid from North Carolina who loved basketball. My mom would make me practice free throws in the backyard until dark. My dad would drive me to games 3 hours away just so I could play against better competition. You were happy then. I was hungry then. The difference?" Michael turned to face his son. "Happiness was something I thought I'd earn after I won everything, but every championship just made me want the next one. Every business success just made me need a bigger success. I kept thinking that if I just achieved enough, proved enough, won enough, people would love you for who you are instead of what you've done." Exactly. But somewhere along the way, I forgot who I was underneath all the winning. I became so afraid of showing weakness, of being vulnerable, that I turned into someone who couldn't stand weakness in anyone else. Damon reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, scrolling to a photo from the community center. It showed him teaching a group of kids how to shoot basketball, their faces bright with excitement and effort. "Dad, look at these kids. They're not perfect. Most of them will never be great at basketball. Some of them can barely afford shoes, but they're trying, and they're happy, and they're real." Michael studied the photo, his expression changing as he looked at each child's face. "They don't know who I am, do they? Some of them do, but they don't care about your trophies or your money. They just want someone to believe in them, even when they miss their shots. And you do believe in them? Every single day, even when they fail. Especially when they fail, because that's when they need it most." Michael sat back down on the hospital bed, suddenly looking exhausted. "I failed too, Damon. I failed at the most important game of all, being a good person. Being someone worth loving instead of just respect." "Dad, you're not done playing yet. This isn't the end of the game. It's just half." For the first time since he'd been in the hospital, Michael smiled, not the practiced smile he wore for cameras, but a real one that reached his eyes. "You know what the hardest part is?" Michael asked. "I spent so many years believing that being tough meant being cruel. that demanding excellence meant tearing people down. I thought that's what it took to be great. Maybe there's a different kind of greatness, Damon suggested. Maybe being great means helping others become great too, not proving that you're better than them. Michael looked at his son with new eyes. Here was someone who had grown up watching Michael's success and failures, who had chosen a completely different path, but somehow ended up wiser than his famous father. The kids you work with, they love you, don't they? Some of them do. But not because I'm perfect or because I never fail. They love me because I show up. Because I listen, because I care about them even when they're struggling. That's what I forgot how to do, Michael said quietly. I forgot how to just care about people without needing them to earn it. A knock on the door interrupted their conversation. Dr. Sarah Kim, Michael's physician, entered with discharge papers and a warm smile. Good morning, Mr. Jordan. How are you feeling? Different, Michael answered honestly. Like I'm seeing clearly for the first time in years. Dr. Kim looked between father and son, noting the obvious change in the room's atmosphere. That's good to hear. Recovery isn't just physical, it's emotional too. You'll need to make some changes in your life to avoid this kind of stress in the future. I think, Michael said, looking at Damon, my son might have some ideas about that. As they prepared to leave the hospital, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, the fear and excitement of not knowing what came next. For the first time since his playing career ended, he was facing a challenge that couldn't be won with talent or determination alone. It could only be won by learning to be human again. Damon, Michael said as they walked toward the hospital exit, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Okay. Do you think it's too late? Do you think I can learn to be the kind of person people actually want to be around? Damon stopped walking and turned to face his father. Dad, I've seen 12-year-olds who'd given up on themselves completely turn their lives around. I've seen kids who thought they were worthless inners. They had incredible gifts. If they can change, if they can grow, then anyone can. Even me, especially you. Because for the first time in your life, you actually want to. As they stepped into the Chicago afternoon, both men knew they were walking into unknown territory. But for the first time in years, they were walking into it together. 2 days later, Damon stood in the parking lot of the Riverside Community Center in Milwaukee, staring at his beat-up Honda Civic while a crazy idea bounced around in his mind like a basketball he couldn't quite catch. His father had burned bridges with rich and famous people who expected perfection. But what if Michael met people who had never heard of his mistakes? What if he worked with kids who didn't care about championships or business deals, but just needed someone to believe in them? The idea seemed impossible. Michael Jordan, working with inner-city kids, the man who couldn't handle imperfection in a 5-star restaurant, dealing with 12-year-olds who came to school hungry and fell asleep in class. But as Damon walked through the community center's front doors, breathing in the familiar smell of floor wax and possibility, he realized something important. Impossible was just another word for hasn't been tried yet. The center buzzed with its usual after-school energy. Kids shouted over video games in the recreation room. Teenagers worked on homework at scattered tables. Somewhere, a basketball bounced steadily against a gym wall. Damon found Mrs. Angela Washington in her small office, surrounded by stacks of paperwork and photos of hundreds of kids who had passed through their programs over the years. At 65, Washington had the kind of wisdom that came from raising 4 children of her own and mentoring thousands of others. Damon, honey, she said, looking up from a grant application. How's your father doing? I've been praying for him. He's better, thank you. Actually, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. Damon settled into the worn chair across from her desk. I have an idea. It's probably crazy, but the best ideas usually are. Tell me. Damon took a deep breath. What if my father came here to work with our kids? Not as Michael Jordan, the celebrity, but just as someone who understands what it's like to feel like nobody believes in you. Mrs. Washington raised an eyebrow. Your father, the Michael Jordan? Here, I know it sounds insane. But listen, these kids don't care about basketball trophies. They care about whether someone shows up for them. Whether someone sees their potential even when they can't see it themselves. And you think your father can do that? Damon hesitated. I think he needs to learn how, and I think our kids could teach him. Mrs. Washington leaned back in her chair, studying Damon's face. She had a gift for reading people, for seeing past what they said to what they really meant. Tell me about your father's heart, she said quietly. Not his achievements, his heart. He's broken, Damon said without hesitation. He's spent so many years demanding perfection from everyone that he forgot how to just care about people. But underneath all that armor, I think he's still that kid from North Carolina who just wanted someone to be proud of him. And you think working with our babies might help him remember? Maybe. But more than that, I think it might help him become someone new. Someone who lifts people up instead of tearing them down. Mrs. Washington was quiet for a long moment, considering. Through her office window they could see kids playing basketball in the gym. Some skilled, some barely able to dribble. All of them trying their best. These children have been hurt before, Damon. By parents who left, teachers who gave up, coaches who only cared about winning. I won't bring someone in here who might hurt them more. I understand. But what if he could learn from them? What if instead of him teaching them how to be champions, they could teach him how to be human? Mrs. Washington smiled. The kind of smile that had comforted 1,000 scared kids on their first day at the center. That's the most beautiful thing I've heard in a long time, so you'll consider it. I'll do more than consider it. But first, I want to meet with your father. I want to look in his eyes and see if he's really ready to be vulnerable with children who need authenticity, not performance. Damon felt a surge of excitement mixed with terror. Getting his father to agree to this would be like asking Michael Jordan to play a game where the rules were completely different, where winning meant something entirely new. There's something else, Mrs. Washington said. If your father comes here, he can't be Michael Jordan the celebrity. He'd be Michael Jordan the volunteer. No special treatment, no publicity, no shortcut. He'd have to earn these kids' trust the same way everyone else does, by showing up, being real, and proving he cares. I think, Damon said slowly, that might be exactly what he needs. That evening, Damon called together some of the regular kids for an impromptu meeting in the gym. 12 faces looked up at him expectantly. Kids aged 10 to 16, each carrying their own stories of struggle and hope. I want to ask you guys something, Damon began, sitting on the floor so he was at their level. How would you feel about getting a new volunteer mentor? Someone who knows what it's like to feel like nobody believes in you. Keisha Williams, the 12-year-old who dreamed of playing college basketball despite having shoes held together with duct tape, raised her hand. Is this person nice? He's learning to be, Damon answered honestly. Does he know about basketball? Asked Tony Martinez, 14 years old and carrying anger like a shield ever since his father walked out. He knows a little bit, Damon said with a small smile. Will he stay? Asked Maria Santos, 13 and wise beyond her years from taking care of her 3 younger siblings. Or will he leave when it gets hard? That was the question that mattered most, and Damon knew it. I think he's tired of leaving, Maria. I think he wants to learn how to stay. The kids looked at each other with the careful consideration of people who had learned not to get their hopes up too easily. Finally, Deshaun Johnson, 15 and the unofficial leader of the group, spoke up. We don't need another person who thinks they're better than us, he said firmly. We need someone real, someone who won't judge us for our mistake. This person has made a lot of mistakes, Damon said. Maybe that's why he's ready to help others learn from theirs. Keisha raised her hand again. Can we meet him first? Before we decide? Absolutely. You guys are the ones who matter here. If you don't think he's right for our center, then he's not right. As the kids headed home for dinner, Damon stayed behind in the empty gym, dribbling a worn basketball and thinking about the conversation he needed to have with his father. How do you convince someone who has spent his whole life being the best to try being ordinary? How do you ask someone who demands perfection to work with kids who are perfectly imperfect? The basketball echoed in the quiet space as Damon practiced his pitch. Dad, I want you to meet some kids who could change your life. They don't care that you're Michael Jordan. They just need someone who won't give up on them, even when they give up on themselves. He missed his next shot, and the ball bounced away into the shadows. But for the first time in days, Damon was smiling. Sometimes the most important shots were the ones you missed while aiming for something bigger than the basket. Tomorrow he would ask his father to take the biggest risk of his life, being vulnerable with children who had every reason not to trust adults, but might just teach him what winning really meant. The gym lights flickered off automatically, leaving Damon in the gathering darkness, but feeling more hopeful than he had in years. Sometimes the best plans started with impossible dreams and ended with something beautiful neither side had expected. The next morning, Damon sat across from his father in the sunroom of Michael's Chicago mansion, watching steam rise from 2 cups of coffee that neither of them had touched. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Lake Michigan stretched endlessly, as calm and unreadable as Michael's expression. So Michael said, his voice carrying the careful tone he used in business meetings, "You want me to volunteer at your community center?" "Yes." "Working with kids?" "Yes." "Kids who have problems?" Damon took a breath. "Kids who need someone to believe in them." Michael stood up and walked to the window, his reflection ghost-like in the glass. "Damon, I appreciate what you're trying to do here, but I'm not a social worker. I'm not trained for this kind of thing." "Dad, these kids don't need training, they need someone real." "Real?" Michael's laugh was sharp, bitter. "I'm the most unreal person you could possibly find. I'm a brand, Damon. I'm an image. Everything about me is calculated and perfect. Not anymore. Not after what happened at the hospital. Not after admitting you pushed everyone away." Damon joined his father at the window. "For the first time in decades, you're actually human. That's what these kids need. Someone human." Michael's jaw tightened. "I won't be some washed-up athlete looking for a feel-good story to make myself feel better. I don't need charity work to prove I'm a good person. This isn't about you proving anything." Damon's voice rose, frustration spilling over. "This is about kids who go to bed hungry, who don't have fathers, who think they're worthless because everyone in their lives has given up on them. And you think I can help them? Me? The guy who just spent his birthday alone because he's destroyed every relationship he's ever had? Yes, because you know what it feels like to have people expect everything from you and give you nothing back. Because you understand what it's like when winning is the only thing that matters and you forget how to just be." Michael turned away from the window, his face a mask of the same stubborn pride that had made him a champion and isolated him from the world. "I don't know how to be around kids, Damon. I barely knew how to be around you when you were growing up. I was always traveling, always working, always chasing the next championship or business deal. So learn. These kids will teach you, if you let them. What if I mess up? What if I say the wrong thing or hurt them somehow?" For the first time since Damon had started this conversation, he heard something other than pride in his father's voice. He heard fear, real, honest fear. "Dad, you will mess up. You'll say the wrong thing sometimes. You'll probably try to push them too hard because that's what you know how to do. But if you stay, if you keep showing up even when it's hard, they'll forgive you. That's what kids do. They forgive people who care enough to keep trying. Michael sat back down, his shoulders sagging under an invisible weight. I don't deserve their forgiveness. Nobody deserves forgiveness, Dad. That's what makes it so powerful. They sat in silence for several minutes, the morning sun climbing higher over the lake. Finally, Michael spoke again, his voice quieter now. Tell me about them. The kids. Damon pulled out his phone and scrolled to a photo from the previous day's meeting. This is Keisha. She's 12, wants to play college basketball someday. Her shoes have holes in them, but she practices on the outdoor court every morning before school. Michael studied the picture, noting the determination in the young girl's eyes, the same hunger he'd carried as a kid in North Carolina. This is Tony. He's 14, angry at the world because his dad left when he was 8. Gets in fights at school, but he's brilliant when he focuses. And this is Maria, 13 years old, takes care of her 3 little brothers while her mom works 2 jobs. She tutors other kids in math even though she barely has time for her own homework. Each face on the screen told a story of struggle and resilience that reminded Michael of his own childhood. The feeling of wanting more but not knowing how to get it, of needing someone to believe in possibilities that seemed impossible. They're not looking for a celebrity, Dad. They're looking for someone who won't leave when things get difficult. Michael handed the phone back to Damon. What exactly would I do there? Whatever needs doing. Help with homework. Play basketball. Listen to their problems. Mostly just show up. Be present. Be someone they can count on. I've never been good at just showing up. I've always needed a purpose, a goal, something to win. Maybe that's the point. Maybe the goal is helping them win at life, not at games. Michael was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. Hands that had once been worth millions, that had signed autographs for countless fans, that had lifted championship trophies while crowds cheered his name. What if they don't like me? What if they see right through me and decide I'm just another rich guy pretending to care? Then you'll have to prove them wrong. Not with words, but with actions. Every single day. The challenge hung between them like a dare. Michael Jordan had never backed down from a challenge in his life, but this one was different. This wasn't about being better than someone else. It was about being better than himself. There's something else, Damon said carefully. The kids want to meet you first, before they decide if you can work with them. Michael's eyebrows shot up. They want to interview me. They want to make sure you're real, that you won't hurt them or leave when it gets hard. These kids have been disappointed by a lot of adults, Dad. They're not going to trust you just because you're famous. The idea of being judged by a group of teenagers should have been insulting to someone of Michael's stature. Instead, it felt strangely appropriate, maybe even fair. When? Michael asked. Tomorrow afternoon, if you're willing. Michael stood up and walked to the window again, looking out at the lake where sailboats dotted the horizon like tiny white promises. Each boat was heading somewhere, carrying people toward destinations they hoped to reach. I don't know how to do this, Damon. I don't know how to be the person they need. You don't have to know how, Dad. You just have to be willing to try. Michael turned back to his son, and for a moment, Damon saw past the legend to the scared kid from North Carolina who had once dreamed of being more than anyone expected. Okay, Michael said quietly, I'll meet them, but I'm not promising anything beyond that. That's all they're asking for. A chance. As Damon prepared to leave, Michael called out to him. These kids, do they know who I am? Some of them do, but they don't care about that. They care about whether you'll show up tomorrow, and the day after that, and the day after that. And if I mess up, then you apologize, learn from it, and show up the next day anyway. After Damon left, Michael stood alone in his mansion, surrounded by trophies and awards that suddenly felt meaningless. Tomorrow, he would face the most important audience of his life, not millions of basketball fans, but 12 kids who needed someone to believe in them. For the first time since his playing days, Michael Jordan felt nervous before a big game, but also for the first time in years, he felt like the outcome actually mattered. The next afternoon, Michael sat in his Bentley outside the Riverside Community Center, staring at the worn brick building with its faded paint and cracked sidewalk. This wasn't the kind of place he usually visited. No red carpets, no photographers, no one waiting to tell him how amazing he was. Through the car window, he could see kids playing on a basketball court with bent rims and a chain net that hung in tatters. The sight should have bothered him. Everything about his perfectionist nature rebelled against anything broken or second-rate. Instead, he found himself remembering his own childhood court in North Carolina, where he'd learned to love the game on concrete that was more holes than surface. Damon appeared at his car window dressed in his usual jeans and community center t-shirt. "You ready for this?" "No," Michael answered honestly, "but I'm here." Inside, the community center buzzed with its usual afternoon energy, but Michael felt like everyone was staring at him. A few adults recognized him and whispered to each other, but the kids barely looked up from their activities. He wasn't sure if that made him feel better or worse. Mrs. Washington met them in the hallway, a warm smile immediately putting Michael at ease. She was smaller than he'd expected, but carried herself with the kind of quiet authority that came from years of caring for children who needed it most. "Mr. Jordan," she said, shaking his hand firmly, "welcome to our center. The children are waiting in the main room." As they walked down the hallway, past walls covered with drawings and photos of smiling kids, Michael felt his carefully prepared speech evaporating. He'd planned to talk about his championships, his business success, his foundation work. Now all of that seemed foolish and empty. 12 kids sat in a loose circle in the center's main room, their ages ranging from 10 to 16. They looked up at him with the careful evaluation of people who had learned not to trust adults too quickly. "Everyone," Damon said. "This is my father, Michael. Not Michael Jordan. Not the basketball legend. Just Michael." Keisha Williams raised her hand immediately. "Mr. Michael, Damon says you want to help us." "Why?" The question was so direct, so honest, that Michael's practiced celebrity responses died in his throat. These kids didn't want smooth answers. They wanted the truth. Michael started, then stopped. He looked around the circle at their expectant faces and realized he had to choose, perform for them or be real with them. "Because I'm lonely," he said finally, "and because I think maybe I've forgotten how to be a good person." The admission surprised everyone, including Michael himself. But something in the kids' expressions shifted, walls coming down, interest replacing wariness. Tony Martinez, the 14-year-old carrying anger like a shield, spoke next. "What's it like being famous?" "Exhausting," Michael answered without thinking. "Everyone expects you to be perfect all the time. You can't make mistakes or show weakness or just be human." "That sounds terrible," said Maria Santos, the 13-year-old who took care of her siblings. "It is. Sometimes. But I thought it was what I wanted. I thought if I was successful enough, important enough, people would love me." Michael paused. "Turns out there's a difference between people loving what you do and people loving who you are." Deshaun Johnson, the 15-year-old leader of the group, leaned forward. "So what happens if you stop being perfect? If you mess up, then you find out who your real friends are," Michael said quietly. "And sometimes you discover you don't have any." The circle fell silent for a moment. These kids understood loneliness, understood what it felt like when people gave up on you or used you for what you could give them. Finally, 10-year-old Jasmine Peters raised her tiny hand. "Mr. Michael, do you know how to play basketball?" The question was so innocent, so wonderfully normal, that Michael actually laughed. The first genuine laugh he'd had in weeks. "I know a little bit," he said with a grin. "Will you teach us?" Keisha asked. "Not the fancy stuff, just how to get better." "I'd like that," Michael said. "But maybe you could teach me some things too." "Like what?" Tony asked skeptically. "Like how to be happy without winning everything. Like how to care about people without expecting them to be perfect." The meeting moved to the gym, where Michael found himself doing something he hadn't done in years, just playing basketball for fun. No cameras, no pressure, no need to prove anything. Just the simple joy of teaching a kid how to hold the ball properly, or celebrating when someone made their first basket. But the real breakthrough came when Keisha kept missing shots during a simple drill. Her frustration mounted with each miss until she finally threw the ball down and started to walk away. Michael's first instinct was to give his typical "failure is not an option" speech. The same harsh perfectionism that had driven him to greatness and driven away everyone who cared about him. Instead, he stopped himself. He walked over to Keisha and knelt down to her level. "You know what? I missed my shot too. Failed to make my high school varsity team my sophomore year." Keisha looked up at him with wide eyes. "Really? Really? The coach told me I was too small, not good enough. I was crushed. But you kept playing." "I kept playing. But not because I stopped missing shots. I probably missed thousands more after that. I kept playing because I learned that missing taught me things that making shots never could." "Like what?" "Like how to keep trying when things get hard. Like how to help teammates who were struggling because I remembered what it felt like to struggle. Like how the most important shot isn't the one you make, it's the next one you take after you miss." Keisha picked up the ball and looked at it thoughtfully. "So missing isn't failing. Missing is learning. Failing is giving up." She nodded solemnly and walked back to the free throw line. This time, when she missed, she didn't get frustrated. She just retrieved the ball and tried again. As the afternoon continued, Michael found himself changing in ways he didn't expect. When Tony got angry after missing a layup, instead of demanding he control his emotions, Michael sat with him and talked about the anger he'd carried as a young player. When Maria had to leave early to pick up her brothers, instead of criticizing her lack of commitment, he helped her gather her things and told her family came first. For the first time in decades, Michael Jordan wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to be the greatest, or prove he was right, or show everyone how much better he was. He was just present. As the session ended and kids started heading home, Keisha approached him one more time. "Mr. Michael, will you come back tomorrow?" The question hit him harder than any championship win ever had. These kids weren't asking for his autograph or his money or his influence. They were asking for his time, his presence, his commitment to showing up. "Would you like me to?" he asked. "Yeah," she said simply. "We would." After the kids left, Michael sat alone in the empty gym, surrounded by the echoes of laughter and effort and hope. For the first time in 20 years, he had enjoyed basketball not because he was winning, but because he was helping someone else believe they could. Damon found him there, sitting on the bleachers with a small smile on his face. "So?" Damon asked. "How did it go?" "I think," Michael said slowly, "I just learned more in 2 hours than I have in the past 2 decades. And I want to come back tomorrow. Not because I have to, not because it's good for my image, but because—" Michael paused, searching for words. "Because I think I might finally understand what winning really means." Outside, the Chicago sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. But inside the community center, something new was beginning. A different kind of game, with different rules, where the only way to win was to help others succeed. For the first time in his life, Michael Jordan was ready to play it. 3 weeks later, Michael's daily routine had completely changed. Instead of spending mornings reading business reports in his empty mansion, he drove to Milwaukee to help serve breakfast at the community center. Instead of afternoon meetings with lawyers and agents, he sat on gymnasium floors, teaching kids how to dribble with both hands. The transformation wasn't just in his schedule, it was in his heart. Tony Martinez had been the hardest kid to reach. His anger ran deep, built from years of disappointment and abandonment. During their first week together, Tony had cursed at Michael, thrown basketballs across the gym, and stormed out twice. "He reminds me of myself," Michael told Damon one evening as they cleaned up after a particularly difficult session. "All that rage with nowhere to put it. What did you do with your anger when you were his age?" "I put it into basketball, used it to fuel my drive to be better." Michael picked up a stray basketball and spun it on his finger, an old habit that still came naturally. But Tony doesn't trust basketball yet. Doesn't trust anything. The breakthrough came during a simple one-on-one drill. Tony was getting frustrated, missing shots and getting angrier with each failure. Instead of telling him to calm down or control his emotions, Michael stopped the drill. "Tony, you want to hit something?" The 14-year-old looked up, surprised. "What? You're carrying a lot of anger." "I can see it, feel it." "Where does it come from?" "My dad," Tony said without hesitation. "He promised he'd come to my 8th grade graduation. Promised he'd be there. I kept looking for him in the crowd, kept thinking he'd show up at the last minute. But he didn't. He didn't. Found out later he was in Vegas with his new girlfriend." Tony's hands clenched into fists. "I hate him for lying to me." Michael sat down on the gym floor, patting the spot next to him. Tony reluctantly joined him. "I used to hate people too," Michael said quietly. "Anyone who disappointed me, anyone who wasn't perfect. I thought hatred made me stronger. Didn't it? It made me lonely. Hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick." Michael looked at Tony with genuine understanding. "Your dad hurt you. That's real, and it matters. But carrying that anger is only hurting you now. So what am I supposed to do with it? Use it, channel it. Let it fuel something good instead of eating you alive." They spent the next hour working on boxing drills against a heavy bag in the corner of the gym. With each punch, Tony released a little more anger, and Michael shared a little more of his own story, the pressure, the loneliness, the way success had become a prison. By the end of the session, Tony was exhausted but calmer. More importantly, he was talking to Michael like he was a person, not just another adult who would eventually disappoint him. Maria Santos presented a different challenge. At 13, she carried responsibilities that would crush most adults. Between caring for her 3 younger brothers and trying to keep up with schoolwork, she barely had time to breathe, let alone focus on her own dreams. Michael found her one afternoon in the center's homework room, helping her 8-year-old brother with math, while simultaneously working on her own algebra. "Maria, when's the last time you did something just for you?" he asked, settling into a chair beside her. She looked up from the equations, confused. "What do you mean? Something that made you happy? Something that wasn't about taking care of someone else?" Maria thought for a long moment. "I don't remember." The answer broke Michael's heart. Here was a girl drowning in responsibility, sacrificing her childhood to hold her family together, and no one was taking care of her. "What would you do if you had a whole afternoon with no responsibilities?" he asked. "I'd probably just sleep," she said with a tired laugh. "What else?" "I don't know. Maybe I'd draw. I used to love drawing before you had to grow up too fast." Maria nodded, tears threatening to spill. The next day, Michael arrived at the center with art supplies. Not expensive professional materials, just basic pencils, paper, and colored markers. He set up a quiet corner where Maria could draw while her brothers played nearby. "This is your space," he told her. 1 hour every day where you get to be 13 years old instead of a second mother. Watching her face light up as she sketched her first picture in months, Michael understood something profound. Sometimes helping someone meant giving them permission to help themselves. Deshawn Johnson was academically gifted but financially limited. College seemed like an impossible dream when application fees alone cost more than his family had for groceries. Michael had started helping him with college applications, but more importantly, he was teaching Deshawn that intelligence was a gift worth fighting for. You know what the difference is between smart people who succeed and smart people who don't? Michael asked one afternoon as they worked on Deshawn's essay. Money, confidence, believing you belong in those rooms with those people. I had to learn that the hard way, that being the best player on the court didn't matter if I didn't believe I deserved to be there. Michael had already written recommendation letters for 3 colleges, using his influence not to guarantee Deshawn's acceptance, but to make sure his application got serious consideration. But beyond the practical help, Michael was giving Deshawn something more valuable, the belief that his dreams weren't too big for someone from his neighborhood. As the weeks passed, Michael's relationship with his own son deepened in ways neither of them had expected. Working side by side at the community center, they finally had something in common beyond shared DNA and mutual disappointment. "You know what's funny?" Damon said one evening as they drove back to Chicago together. "I spent my whole childhood wishing you would pay attention to me the way you paid attention to basketball. Now I'm watching you pay attention to these kids the way I always wanted you to pay attention to me." Michael felt a stab of regret so sharp it made him catch his breath. "I'm sorry, Damon. I'm sorry I didn't know how to be your father when you needed me. You're learning now. That matters, does it? Can I really make up for all those missed games, missed conversations, missed chances to just be your dad?" Damon was quiet for several miles, watching the highway stretch ahead of them in the gathering darkness. "Dad, you can't change the past, but you can change what happens next. These kids are getting the father I always wanted. That has to count for something." The conversation hung between them like a bridge, finally being built after years of standing on opposite sides of a river. One evening, as Michael helped clean up after a particularly successful mentoring session, something magical happened. The kids had planned a surprise for him, not because it was his birthday or any special occasion, but simply because they wanted to show appreciation. They'd made him a card, hand-drawn and decorated with glitter and stickers. Inside, each child had written a message. "Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for letting me be a kid. Thank you for believing I'm smart enough for college. Thank you for teaching me that missing isn't failing. Keisha." As Michael read each message, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: pure, uncomplicated love. Not love for what he'd accomplished or what he could provide, but love for who he was choosing to become. "We want to throw you a real birthday party," Keisha announced. "A do-over for the one where nobody came." Michael looked around the room at these 12 beautiful, broken, hopeful faces and realized something profound. He'd finally found his real team. Not the one that had won championships, but the one that was helping him win at life. "I'd love that," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But only if you let me help plan it. I want to celebrate all of us." As they began planning the party, Michael felt a lightness in his chest that he hadn't experienced since childhood. For the first time in years, he was looking forward to something that had nothing to do with business deals or public appearances. He was looking forward to celebrating with people who actually loved him. But as the party planning intensified, an unexpected challenge was approaching. One that would test whether Michael's transformation was real or just another performance for a different audience. Derek Williams, his former teammate whom he'd humiliated 3 years earlier, had heard about Michael's community center work and Derek had questions about whether Michael Jordan was capable of genuine change, or if this was just another calculated move in the game of public relations. The real test was coming, and this time, the stakes were higher than any championship Michael had ever played for. Derek Williams arrived at the Riverside Community Center on a Tuesday afternoon with a camera crew from Channel 7 News and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The kids were in the middle of their after-school program when the news van pulled into the parking lot, immediately drawing curious looks from passers-by. Michael was helping Keisha with her free throws when Mrs. Washington appeared in the gym doorway, her usual calm expression replaced by obvious concern. "Michael, there's someone here to see you," she said quietly. "Derek Williams. He's brought reporters." The basketball slipped from Michael's hands and bounced across the gym floor. He hadn't spoken to Derek since that disastrous restaurant opening 3 years ago, the night he'd publicly humiliated his former teammate in front of investors and critics. In the main room, Derek stood with his arms crossed, flanked by a reporter and cameraman. He'd aged well, still tall and athletic, wearing an expensive suit that announced his success as a restaurant owner, despite the setbacks Michael had caused. "Hello, Michael," Derek said, his voice carrying the cold politeness of someone settling an old score. "Derek?" Michael kept his voice neutral, though his heart was racing. "What brings you here?" "I've been hearing interesting things about your new charitable work." Derek's emphasis on charitable made it sound like a dirty word. "Thought I'd come see for myself if Michael Jordan has really found religion, or if this is just another PR move." The reporter stepped forward with her microphone. "Mr. Jordan, is it true that you're volunteering here as part of an image rehabilitation campaign? Some sources suggest this is connected to a business deal you're planning to announce." Michael felt the familiar surge of competitive anger, the instinct to attack, to defend himself, to prove he was right and everyone else was wrong. Behind him, he could hear the kids gathering, confused and upset by the sudden intrusion of cameras and accusations. This was the moment. The test of everything he'd learned, everything he'd become over the past month. His old self would have destroyed Derek verbally, would have used his superior wit and ruthless tongue to humiliate his former teammate in front of the cameras. His old self would have turned this into a competition he had to win. But looking past Derek to where Keisha stood with worried eyes, where Tony's anger was already building, where Maria clutched her younger brother protectively, Michael made a different choice. "You're right, Derek," he said quietly, stunning everyone in the room. What?" Derek had clearly prepared for a fight, not an agreement. "You're right to question my motives. I did treat you badly. I did humiliate you at your restaurant opening because I thought being right was more important than being kind." Michael's voice was steady, honest. "I can't change what I did to you, but I'm trying to change who I am." The unexpected apology knocked Derek off balance. The reporter sensed the story shifting and pressed forward. "So you admit this is about fixing your image?" "No," Michael said, turning to face the camera. "This is about fixing my heart." He gestured toward the kids who had gathered behind him. "These children aren't helping me rebuild my reputation. They're helping me rebuild my soul. They don't care about my championships or my money. They care about whether I show up for them, whether I keep my promises, whether I see them as people worth loving instead of projects worth fixing." Tony stepped forward, his teenage bravado masking obvious vulnerability. "Nobody asked Mr. Michael to come here. We asked him to stay, because he listens to us, because he doesn't judge us for our mistakes." Keisha raised her hand like she was in class. "Mr. Derek, are you trying to take Mr. Michael away from us?" The simple question from a 12-year-old cut through all the adult politics and media manipulation. Derek looked at her innocent face, and something in his expression softened. "I'm not trying to take anyone away, sweetheart. I needed to know if he was being real with you." "He is," Maria said firmly, stepping up beside Keisha. He helps me with homework even when I'm cranky. He brought art supplies so I could draw again. Real people do that. Fake people don't. Deshawn, the 15-year-old leader, addressed Derek directly. Look, Mr. Williams, I don't know what happened between you and Mr. Michael before, but I know what happens here every day. He shows up. He cares. He's helping me get into college not because it makes him look good, but because he believes I deserve a chance. The camera captured everything. The kids defending Michael not with scripted words but with genuine emotion, their obvious love for someone who had become a constant in their unstable lives. Derek watched this display of loyalty and slowly began to understand something important. These children weren't performing for cameras or protecting a celebrity. They were protecting someone they considered family. Michael, Derek said, his voice losing its hard edge, "Can we talk privately?" They walked outside to the parking lot, leaving the confused reporter and cameraman behind. The spring air was crisp, filled with the sounds of children playing in the distance. "I came here to expose you," Derek said bluntly. "I thought this was all an act. Another way for you to control the narrative, make yourself look good after years of treating people like garbage. I wouldn't blame you for thinking that. It's exactly what I would have done a few months ago." Derek studied Michael's face, searching for signs of deception or manipulation. Instead, he saw something he'd never seen before: genuine humility. "What changed?" Derek asked. "I almost lost everything. Not my money or my fame. I almost lost my humanity. My son saved me by showing me what I'd become and giving me a chance to become something better." They stood in silence for several minutes, watching kids play basketball on the outdoor court with its bent rims and cracked concrete. The sight reminded both men of their own childhoods, when basketball was about joy rather than business. "I forgive you," Derek said suddenly. Michael looked up, startled. "What? For the restaurant? For humiliating me? For nearly destroying my business?" Derek's voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "I forgive you." "Derek, you don't have to. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me and for them." He nodded toward the community center. "Those kids don't need to see two grown men carrying grudges like weapons. They need to see what forgiveness looks like." Michael felt tears threatening, tears of relief, gratitude, and something deeper. For the first time in years, someone he'd wronged was offering him grace instead of revenge. "Thank you," he whispered. "Don't thank me yet. Prove you've changed. Not to me, not to the cameras, but to yourself. Keep showing up for those kids even when nobody's watching." Derek walked back to the news crew and spoke quietly to the reporter. Whatever he said caused her to nod reluctantly and signal the cameraman to pack up. No story today, at least not the story they'd come to find. As the news van pulled away, Derek rolled down his window. "Michael, that birthday party the kids are planning for you? Yeah? Count me in. It's time we celebrated something worth celebrating." After Derek left, Michael stood alone in the parking lot, overwhelmed by what had just happened. His greatest fear, being exposed as a fraud, had come true. But instead of destroying him, it had revealed something beautiful. The kids loved him, not despite his flaws, but including them. Damon appeared beside him, having witnessed the entire confrontation from inside. "So," Damon asked, "how does it feel to pass the test?" "What test?" "The one where you chose them over yourself, where you protected their feelings instead of your reputation." Michael looked back at the community center where kids were visible through the windows, continuing their activities as if nothing had happened. Their world remained stable because he'd chosen love over pride. "It feels," Michael said slowly, "like the first game I ever won that actually mattered." Inside the center, Mrs. Washington was already planning. If Derek Williams had forgiven Michael Jordan, and if the kids trusted him enough to defend him against reporters, Then maybe it was time for the birthday party that would show the world what real success looked like. Not trophies or championships, but a room full of people who chose to love you anyway. 2 weeks later, on a sunny Saturday afternoon in May, the Riverside Community Center buzzed with an energy Michael had never experienced before. Colorful streamers hung from the ceiling, hand-drawn posters covered the walls, and the smell of homemade cake filled the air. But this wasn't just any party. This was Michael Jordan's second chance at a birthday celebration. Michael arrived early, dressed in jeans and a simple t-shirt instead of his usual expensive suits. He'd offered to hire professional caterers and party planners, but the kids had insisted on doing everything themselves. This was their gift to him, and they wanted it to be personal. Keisha met him at the door, practically bouncing with excitement. "Mr. Michael, come see what we made." She led him to the main room, where 12 handmade decorations told the story of their friendship. Not pictures of his basketball career or business achievements, but drawings of their time together, Michael teaching Tony to channel his anger, helping Maria with her art, sitting on the gym floor listening to Deshawn's college dreams. "Do you like it?" Maria asked nervously, pointing to a banner that read "Happy Rebirthday, Mr. Michael" in rainbow letters. "I love it," Michael said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's perfect." As guests began to arrive, Michael experienced something magical. People were actually showing up. But these weren't the same people from his original invitation list. These were better. Derek Williams arrived first, carrying a box of desserts from his restaurant. "Thought you might want some professional backup for the cake," he said with a grin. Sarah Martinez came next, the small business owner whose marketing company Michael had nearly destroyed. She'd brought promotional materials for the community center, her way of contributing something meaningful instead of just showing up empty-handed. Johnson Chen, the chef Michael had humiliated, arrived with his teenage son. "I thought David should meet the kids here," Johnson explained. "Maybe he can volunteer too." One by one, people Michael thought he'd lost forever walked through the doors of the community center. Not because they'd forgotten his past mistakes, but because they'd seen evidence of his genuine change. But the biggest surprise came when Tommy Rodriguez arrived with a special guest. Phil Jackson, Michael's former coach with the Chicago Bulls. "Michael," Phil said, embracing his former player, "I heard about what you're doing here. I'm proud of you." "Phil, how did you..." "Derek called me, told me you'd found something more important than winning games. Said you'd learned how to win at life." As the party officially began, Michael found himself surrounded by an impossible mixture. Former teammates and business associates standing alongside children from the inner city, all of them celebrating not what he had accomplished, but who he had become. The emotional climax came when the kids presented their special gift. Led by Keisha, they'd prepared something that would change Michael's understanding of success forever. "Mr. Michael," Keisha announced, standing on a chair so everyone could see her, "we want to tell everyone what you taught us, but not about basketball, about life." Tony stepped forward first, his usual anger replaced by quiet confidence. "Mr. Michael taught me that being angry is okay, but hurting people because you're angry isn't. He helped me turn my anger into strength instead of letting it turn me into someone I didn't want to be." Maria followed, holding a drawing she'd made. "He taught me that taking care of family is important, but I can't take care of anyone if I don't take care of myself too. He gave me permission to be a kid again." Deshawn pulled out an acceptance letter from Northwestern University. "He taught me that being smart isn't enough. You have to believe you deserve to use your intelligence, and he helped me believe I belong in places I never thought I could go." One by one, each child shared what Michael had given them. Not money or opportunities, but something more valuable, the belief that they were worth investing in, worth loving, worth the time and attention of someone who could have been anywhere else. When they finished, the room fell silent, except for the sound of adults wiping away tears. These weren't scripted testimonials or public relations moments. These were real children talking about real transformation in their lives. Then Damon stood up, and Michael's heart stopped. "I want to say something too," Damon began, looking directly at his father. "I spent most of my life angry at my dad for not being the father I wanted. I thought he was too focused on winning, too demanding, too impossible to please." Michael braced himself for public criticism, for his son to finally voice years of accumulated hurt. But watching him with these kids, I realized something. He wasn't a bad father because he didn't know how to love. He was a scared father because he loved so much he didn't know how to show it without demanding perfection. Damon's voice grew stronger. "Dad, you gave me something I didn't realize until now. You showed me what it looked like to care so deeply about something that you'd sacrifice anything for it. I just wish it had taken me 28 years to realize that the thing you cared about most was me." Michael stood up, tears streaming down his face, and embraced his son in front of everyone. For the first time since Damon was a little boy, they hugged without reservation, without the weight of disappointment between them. "I'm sorry it took me so long to learn how to be your dad," Michael whispered. "You're learning now. That's what matters." As the party continued, Michael moved through the room in wonder. Here were former enemies breaking bread with inner-city children. Here were people he'd wronged choosing to celebrate his transformation. Here were kids who had taught him more about winning than any championship ever had. Phil Jackson pulled him aside as the evening wound down. "You know what I'm most proud of, Michael?" "What?" "You finally figured out that the best leaders don't create followers. They create more leaders. Look around this room. Every person here is better because they know you. That's a championship that lasts forever." As guests began to leave, each person hugged Michael goodbye. Not the quick, obligatory embraces of celebrity meet and greets, but real hugs from people who genuinely cared about him. Derek Williams was among the last to leave. "Michael, I have something to tell you." "What's that?" "I came to that first day planning to expose you as a fraud, but I'm leaving tonight planning to recommend you for the Community Service Award from the Chicago Athletic Association. What you've built here, it's more impressive than any game you ever played." After everyone left, Michael sat alone in the community center with Mrs. Washington, surrounded by the remnants of the best birthday party of his life. "How does it feel?" she asked, beginning to clean up the decorations. "Different," Michael said, helping her fold chairs. "All my life, I thought success meant being better than everyone else. Tonight, I learned it means helping everyone else be better. And now," Michael looked around the room where he'd discovered what really mattered, not trophies gathering dust in a mansion, but relationships that grew stronger every day. "Now I know what I want to be remembered for. Not as the greatest basketball player of all time, but as someone who helped kids believe they could be great at life." Outside, the Chicago skyline glittered in the distance, beautiful and full of promise. But inside the community center, something even more beautiful had been born. The understanding that the greatest victories aren't won on courts or in boardrooms, but in the hearts of people who choose to love you, not because you're perfect, but because you're trying to be better. Michael Jordan had finally learned how to win the game that mattered most. And for the first time in his life, he was surrounded by people who were genuinely happy to celebrate with him. As he turned off the lights and locked the door, Michael smiled. Tomorrow, he'd be back. Not because he had to, but because he'd found his true calling, helping others discover their own greatness. The lonely birthday was a distant memory. In its place was something infinitely more valuable, A life filled with purpose, surrounded by people who loved him for exactly who he was becoming. 6 months later, on a crisp October morning, Michael Jordan stood in the gymnasium of the new Second Chance Community Center in South Chicago. The building was modest compared to his business empire, no marble floors or crystal chandeliers, but the laughter echoing from its walls made it feel like the most beautiful place on earth. The center was Michael's birthday gift to himself on his 62nd birthday, funded quietly through his foundation, with no press releases or ribbon-cutting ceremonies. He'd learned that the most meaningful victories happened without cameras. "Mr. Michael, watch this," called out Keisha, now 13 and 3 inches taller. She dribbled between her legs twice before sinking a perfect free throw. The old community center had gotten her new shoes, but more importantly, it had given her the confidence to try out for her school's basketball team. She'd made varsity as an 8th grader. Tony Martinez, now 15, jogged over carrying a stack of college brochures. His anger had transformed into leadership, and he was helping younger kids work through their own frustrations. "Northwestern wants to interview me for their social work program," he announced proudly. "Just like Damon." Michael grinned. "What did I tell you about that anger? Use it to fuel something good, don't let it eat me alive," Tony recited with a smile. "I'm thinking about becoming a counselor for kids like us." Maria Santos rushed up with paint still on her fingers, having just finished a mural in the art room Michael had specifically requested. At 14, she'd found her voice through art and was already selling small paintings to help support her family. More importantly, she'd learned to take care of herself too. "My little brothers love the reading program here," she told Michael. "And I got accepted to that summer art camp you told me about." "You earned that acceptance yourself," Michael reminded her. "I just made sure they knew about your talent." Deshaun Johnson appeared via video call on Michael's phone, calling from his Northwestern University dorm room. He was thriving academically and had started a mentorship program for inner-city students. "Michael, I wanted you to meet someone," he said, turning his phone to show a nervous-looking 12-year-old boy. "This is Johnson. He reminds me of myself at that age. Smart, but scared he doesn't belong anywhere." Michael waved at the screen. "Hello, Johnson. Deshaun's going to help you see what I helped him see, that intelligence is a gift worth fighting for." The ripple effect of Michael's transformation had spread far beyond Milwaukee. The Second Chance Foundation now operated community centers in 12 cities, each one built around the same principle: everyone deserves someone who believes in them, especially when they can't believe in themselves. But Michael's greatest pride wasn't in the number of centers or kids served. It was in watching his original 12 kids become mentors themselves, passing on what they'd learned to the next generation. Mrs. Washington, now the Foundation's Director of Programs, found Michael in his usual spot, not behind an executive desk, but sitting on a gym floor with a group of 10-year-olds, teaching them that missing shots was part of learning. "The board meeting's in an hour," she reminded him gently. "5 more minutes," Michael said, not wanting to interrupt the lesson. These weren't stockholders or business partners waiting for him. They were donors and community leaders who'd bought into his vision of success measured in transformed lives, rather than quarterly profits. Damon appeared in the doorway, now the Foundation's executive director. Their relationship had completely transformed, built on shared purpose rather than shared disappointment. They worked together every day, and Michael finally understood what he'd missed during Damon's childhood: the joy of watching someone you love discover their own gift. "Dad, there's someone here to see you," Damon said. Michael looked up to see Elena, his former housekeeper, standing with a shy 7-year-old girl holding her hand. "Mr. Jordan," Elena said, "this is my granddaughter, Sophia. She just moved here from Mexico and doesn't speak much English yet. I was hoping she could join our after-school program," Michael finished, standing and kneeling to Sophia's eye level. Hola Sofia. Mi llamo Michael. ¿Te gusta el basketball? Sophia's face lit up with surprise and delight that this tall man spoke her language. She nodded enthusiastically. Excellent. Keisha will show you around. She speaks Spanish too. As Elena left Sophia in Keisha's capable hands, she pulled Michael aside. You know, Mr. Jordan, I've worked for a lot of wealthy people over the years, but I've never seen anyone change the way you have. Elena, you saved my life that night you found me in the study. If you hadn't called Damon, no sir, you saved your own life by choosing to become the person these children needed you to be. That evening, Michael's 62nd birthday celebration looked nothing like the elaborate party he'd planned the year before. Instead of his empty mansion, he celebrated at the community center. Instead of expensive catering, the kids had made sandwiches and a chocolate cake that was slightly lopsided, but perfect in every way that mattered. The guest list was different too. Derek Williams was there with his wife and teenage daughter, who'd started volunteering at the center. Sarah Martinez had brought her own children to see where their mother's new marketing firm was making a difference. Johnson Chen and his son had become regular volunteers, teaching kids cooking skills along with life lessons. Phil Jackson called during the party to wish Michael happy birthday and share some news. The Basketball Hall of Fame wanted to create an exhibit about Michael's post-playing career, focusing on his community work rather than his championships. They want to call it the second half, Phil explained over speakerphone so everyone could hear. About how you discovered that the real game begins when the buzzer sounds on your playing career. Michael looked around the room at faces that had become family, not the family he was born into or married into, but the family he'd chosen to build through love and service. Tell them I'm honored, Michael said. But the exhibit should feature all of us. Every kid who believed they could change, every volunteer who showed up, every donor who invested in hope instead of just portfolios. This was never about me becoming great. It was about all of us becoming better together. As the party wound down and kids headed home with their families, Michael found himself alone in the gym with a basketball, just as he'd been countless times throughout his life. But this time felt different. This time, he wasn't practicing to beat someone else. He was just enjoying the simple pleasure of the game he'd always loved. Damon joined him, and they shot baskets together in comfortable silence until Damon asked the question that had been on his mind all day.
Dad, do you ever miss it?
The fame, the adulation, the feeling of being the greatest. Michael caught the ball and held it, thinking about all the trophies gathering dust in his mansion, while this modest community center overflowed with life and laughter. You know what I miss? Michael said finally, I miss the person I used to be before I became afraid of being human. But I don't miss being great at basketball. I'm too busy learning how to be great at life. He passed the ball to Damon, who took a shot that swished through the net. Besides, Michael added with a smile, being loved by 12 kids beats being admired by 12 million fans. Every single time. As they turned off the lights and locked up the center, father and son walked out together into the Chicago night. Tomorrow, they'd be back, continuing the work that had given both of their lives meaning and purpose. Michael Jordan had finally learned the secret that had eluded him during his legendary playing career. The greatest victories aren't about beating others, they're about helping others win. And in that truth, he'd found something more valuable than any championship ring. A legacy that would outlast any record book, built one transformed life at a time. The game continued, but now Michael was playing for the right team. Michael Jordan's story shows us that it's never too late to change. From a lonely birthday to a life filled with purpose, he learned that real winning means helping others succeed. Where are you listening from today? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I love connecting with our amazing community around the world. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Every subscription helps us spread more stories of kindness, hope, and second chances to people who need to hear them. Ready for another inspiring story? Click on the video appearing on your screen right now. You won't want to miss what happens next. Keep spreading kindness, and I'll see you in the next story.